Hey guys, Bic Mitchum here. Today I have Azzatru and Riva here to chat about Star Wars Battlefront 2. Perhaps maybe put their perspective on some of the issues we discussed this week with the podcast with Stu and Moss Andy. So, welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So, right off the top, I think I might kind of throw one at you guys that I'm sure you guys have heard a lot, but and Azzatru and I spoke about it, but there's this opinion that just keeps going around as game changers that you guys are going to love the game no matter what, are going to disagree with EA. Does this opinion finally need to die?
I
Well,
think one of the
go,
main
go.
issues for that is like the game changer program isn't very open, so a lot of people don't actually know what goes on.
That's a good
There's
point.
some good reasons for that. There's some good reasons for that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like it's not EA's fault and it's not our fault. It's nobody's fault. It just can't be open in that way. I transparency is always a good thing to have, and we do need more transparency overall for the game and the development and stuff like that. But there's just some things you can't talk about, and that sort of goes in hand with stuff like the upcoming content, how we don't find out stuff for a long while.
Yeah, right. And it's the fact that the whole point of the game changer program is to provide feedback, is to get like the gamer's insight into the game. So I don't like from right off the bat, a game changer should be something good, you know? Like just because we aren't able to talk about what we're doing, it's not like we haven't been helping the game already. Like a lot of the decisions have been influenced by game changers before, and that's just something that we can't, you know, go on Twitter and say, hey, I changed this about the game. It's that partnership with EA that we keep under wraps.
And on top of that, I can't think of any game development studio that uses their community of influencers to this degree. I know Ubisoft used to do stuff like this, and Call of Duty, Activision with Call of Duty and Destiny used to do stuff like this. But on the biggest scale of the Game Changer program with EA, there is no company out there that does something like this. Which I think EA is leading the way with this sort of stuff. To be honest, personally, it's not perfect, but they're continuously improving every month, every year. It's getting bigger, but also better at the same time because nothing's perfect to start off with. And I feel like the reputation is the label of game changer is not probably where it should be, but that's not necessarily down to anyone's fault. To be honest, I can't. It may change over time with some people with more transparency, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and it it's a good thing because we're all gamers. We love the game. We want it to be good. Like, you know, we wouldn't not enjoy it. We wouldn't, like this opportunity. We really care about the game. Otherwise, if we didn't care about it, we wouldn't be there.
Can you maybe expand on what you mean by transparency?
I think it's a tough one because there's got to be a fine line of things you can talk about and things you can't. Um, because it's Star Wars, it's harder to talk about,
Like in my opinion, the way the program is set up is like a lot of people see the game changers as, oh, so we're the ones responsible for this, we're the ones responsible for something bad in the game, or why don't
Yeah.
you change this? But at the end of the day, we don't work for DICE. Like we aren't game developers. We're just here to give the opinion on the game that they're making. So a lot of the decisions like really aren't made from the game changers. We're just assisting most of the time.
We're giving them an input from a perspective of someone that will play the game a lot, someone that cares about this franchise, just like, thousands of other people do. And it's not always about who's got the most subscribers, because it was never about that. There's a lot of community people that don't even have YouTube channels that are involved. Forum members. There are people that post awesome curated content on Twitter and other outlets like that. It's not just about, oh, they're a big YouTuber, they, you know, they do this, they do that. We have told them what we really don't like and what we do like, because you have to get both the positives and negatives. It can't just be praising everything, but it can't also be about just saying abuse because you don't like one or two things or a lot of it about the game. It doesn't work like that.
Okay. Do you think that Battlefront 2 players maybe should be a little more patient with their content?
No, I think
No.
I have every right to be frustrated at the moment. Like, I'm personally frustrated. Like, being a game changer, we have got ideas of what the game is aspiring to be, but it's the fact that if we're still in this position as well as everyone else, like we don't get to, we don't have like the few content, we don't have season 2 on our PCs, you know. We're still in the position of playing the same thing every day, and you know, we're frustrated as well. We want this new content, and like that's just how it is at the moment. We've been given the answers to why it's taking so long because of the progression. They wanted to fix it, but now is the turning point for DICE.
Yeah.
Now that this is finished, can they actually live up to their promises and deliver what they should have from the beginning?
It's like, I wasn't super bothered about in terms of new content maybe a month ago, but it's now at this point where 2 years ago we had a lot more coming to the first game. We had the expansion, we had the odd new map added in for free, with like Survivor Surrender or Twilight of Hoth, whatever. It's getting to the point where it's like, it's now where the previous game did have a lot more content coming to it, despite not having the whole progression issue. So it's like, now we need more content, and they've got to deliver on what they've sort of promised us, which is more stuff, more frequently. And if they do that, I feel like, okay, we'll be in a good position for the future. But it's now getting to the point where the first game had more content added earlier on. So I'm definitely disappointed from that perspective.
Okay, because I did pull up the DLC schedule for the last game, and there was a steady every 3 months there was game modes, maps, heroes, and we're just kind of like, it seems a little more discombobulated, or I guess disorganized this time around. But there was the unexpected progression overhaul that probably threw a wrench into plans. I'm sure there was more aspirations for the first quarter of 2018 that probably couldn't be met because of that. But
I mean, you did mention a point about more developers in the last podcast, and I have to disagree with that, because they have over 100 people working on the game right now, which is a decent amount. That's actually a lot more than I expected. I did expect it to drop a lot less than that, but you can't always make things faster with more people. Like, as stupid as that sounds in games development, it doesn't work like that, because smaller teams actually tend to work better. You know, if you just throw hire loads of new people that haven't worked on a project and they're brand new onto the project, it's just adding more people, and it can create messy communication. It happens at any company. It doesn't happen just in games, but sometimes it's best to keep it small and not mess up, and be clear, and have people that actually have been working on the project for some time, and not just bring in 20, 30 new people that have not worked maybe on Frostbite before or something along those lines. You know, it sounds easy just to hire more people, but it also brings up the cost of running the game as a live service, because, you know, Stockholm is one of the most expensive cities to, you know, live and work in, like, for games development, so they have to pay more. They've not had any microtransaction money since, like, the day before the game came out, right? And up until the other week. So all they've been making on this game is through sales, and you're probably thinking, well, they've sold millions. Yeah, but that's not how businesses work. They have to also make money through the microtransactions to keep supporting the game. So just adding more people just brings up the cost more. So if they're not making any, if they wasn't making any revenue, they've lost 5 months worth of revenue off microtransactions. That's millions of dollars lost.
For sure. And I think I may have mentioned that I'm not, like I said, I don't know how everything works, and I'm glad you put that perspective on things, because as somebody that's doesn't work in the industry, it the industry that I'm in, you kind of think like, more people, the better off you are. So I'm glad you put that spin on it, because it does kind of shed some light on
I feel
on
like something I like to do is just give a perspective, like a realistic perspective, to a lot of people, because a lot of people don't understand, but maybe a sentence or two can help them learn that it isn't as easy or as simple as that. Just hiring more people, and at the end of the day, people have had to move on to Battlefield 2018, just like with any studio. Once you've completed a game, some people carry on development and support for one game, but then it's time to turn attention to the next game, which is obviously the next Battlefield, because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people are excited for. That's the next big release. That's the next game they're working on, and they need more people to go and help out on that stuff. So, and that takes priority. Like, people can say, "But I paid for Battlefront 2." Yeah, but that you paid for it and you've played it. They need to do a better job with the live service, but you can't just think, they've not dropped support for it. I hate it when people say, like, EA's, not caring about the game. People are making YouTube videos saying, Battlefront's dead, EA's not working on it anymore, they don't care about the game. Well, that's not true. Why would they still have over 100 people working on the game every single day for 5 months?
For sure. Next thing I wanted to mention here actually probably goes into, kind of, we'll tie right into that, is, and we'll get Riva to start here. When you guys hear that people want EA to lose the rights to Star Wars, what kind of things go through your mind? Because, like Andy discussed, he didn't feel DICE was the right company for Battlefront 2. Kind of give us your thoughts on why you think EA and DICE are the right team to be working on Battlefront, to kind of throw that, maybe spin a positive on that.
I think regardless, whoever is working on a Battlefront title for Star Wars is going to face the same problems that DICE are facing with communication, with what they can't add to the game, what fans want but they can't put in, and that's going to be across any game. If Activision were to do it, they still have the same problems. The thing with DICE is that, do they have the creative control? Like with EWOCon, for example, that's from DICE. So is that to say EWOCon is not what people want from their Star Wars game? Because, I mean, from my point of view, yeah, it's creative. Will it last a long time? No, because it's really repetitive. And from that point of view, I think that DICE are looking to bring the creative aspects to Star Wars, but the way I see it is that if you're creating a Star Wars game, is it really about the creativity of a studio, or is it about the fans wanting authentic Star Wars battles, like Clone Wars, like Geonosis, stuff like that? And that's what we haven't received. So I think regardless of the studio, they need to focus on actually bringing Star Wars to the game.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If it became where the exclusivity of EA just creating Star Wars games disappeared and it allowed other studios to create stuff, fair enough, because it means more Star Wars games. But at the same time, you have to look at the track record of a lot of other studios that probably, like Activision, who release Call of Duty on a yearly basis and not sort of listening to their fans, are having $40 season passes and microtransactions in the game, are really struggling with various aspects of the community. People will mention Ubisoft now because Ubisoft have really stepped up in recent years. They've done a really good job at turning around their company and games, but at the same time, regardless, they're all in it to make money. They're a business. You have to understand that. They're all there to sell copies, sell microtransactions, and make money. So, some people have said people like Bethesda do a Star Wars RPG and stuff like that, but if they wanted to do something, they could pitch an idea and it be turned away by Disney because they want to be creative in their way, which they've done with, some of their other franchises, but they'd be restricted just like DICE have been. We've got Respawn's Star Wars game on the way, which Respawn are a very talented team. They've got some really good people working on that Star Wars game. So hopefully that is a good game. EA Vancouver are now working on the remains of what was Visceral's game, and who knows, maybe there is something else in the works. It's just not been announced yet. These games take time. It's not like, if they announced in a few years' time when the exclusivity agreement ends that a big studio like Ubisoft, a big company like Ubisoft is getting one of their developers to make a Star Wars game, say that happens in 3 years' time, you're going to be waiting 2 to 3 years for that game. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And in that time, we're going to be getting another couple of Star Wars games from EA.
Well, one of the things I've been thinking of lately is, you see it all the time. Consumers, players, I should say, want more heroes, more game modes, more maps. Is that formula eventually going to... in my opinion, the map rotation can't get much larger without having a system where you kind of choose or vote for maps, because, to play the whole map rotation on Galactic Assault, that's got to take hours to play, because you play it twice every time. So
yeah, absolutely.
are we eventually I have to say that I don't personally enjoy Ewok Hunt. I felt a couple rounds and it feels pretty good, but it doesn't have the kind of longevity. But I have to say I do applaud them for trying to kind of step out of the zone and bring back, Jetpack Cargo is a kind of a remake of an old game mode, and kind of to try something completely different. And I know we did have Hero Hunt, which is not really the same thing. But it is like a hunt game mode. But I got to applaud them for kind of trying something different. But I guess where I'm going with this is just, right now it's Clone Wars, Clone Wars, Clone Wars. If we were to get some clone heroes, some clone maps, Clone Wars game mode, is that going to save it? Is that kind of, do consumers know what they want?
DICE are 100% no. They're not, under a rock. They know everyone wants Clone Wars. What... I said this in one of my videos a while ago, that the new community manager, Ben Walk, has started this new community transmission series where he just, gives out some details before the patch actually goes live. And he mentioned that, and this is something that Dennis said at the beginning of Battlefront 2, is that you're not always going to get, massive content drops. Things are going to be spread out more frequently, and I think DICE are trialing these limited time game modes, and I think in terms of Battlefront 2 they don't work very well, opposed to Fortnite. They can work limited time modes really well, but with Battlefront, because there's such a lack of things, people just want these game modes to stay. And I think the limited time modes that DICE are introducing, people kind of judging DICE for not being as creative as they could be, because these game modes, like you said, Ewok Hunt is fun for a few rounds, but that's not DICE's intention. They want you to just play it for a few rounds. The actual massive game modes and future stuff is probably going to come within the seasons, and because that's been pushed back, this is why we've probably received Ewok Hunt at this time, to kind of fill that gap. So I think any future, permanent game modes are going to be with the massive content drops, and the smaller stuff is going to be just to keep us busy and keep it fresh.
I just want to talk about the limited time gamers for a little bit, because it was mentioned in the last podcast. They definitely need to improve the communication in terms of how long before the mode starts it's going to be active for. And that's has improved with Ewok Hunt. We've finally got an in-game message saying it will end this time on this day,
which is great.
which is great. It definitely should have been there to start with jetpack cargo. But there's a lot of people that are saying limited time modes should not exist. This, that, and the other. What good does it do? Well, the thing is, when there's a limited time mode, it allows a bit of excitement. Like, oh, this is coming out. I better jump on. The crazy ideas. I never thought we was going to get a playable Ewok hunt mode. I didn't think we was going to get a jetpack cargo mode, and it's all quite different. And they're having different ideas, fun modes that are only supposed to last a couple of weeks. And with Ewok Hunt, they did take it offline for a couple of days to to fix it. Because if it was a permanent mode, they just said, okay, it's in permanently now, and they wanted to make a change to it, it would then sort of just disappear, and people are like, well, it's a permanent mode. Why can't I make changes to it? Well, why can't they make changes to it now? They took it offline, they made a change or two, and then they brought it back for a couple of days. They did say the other day it's going to come back again. So I think they need to get into a routine of every 2 weeks there needs to be something new, whether it just be jetpack cargo comes back again, even though that people didn't necessarily like it. Some people did like it. If there's a constant limited time mode, I feel like that's a much better routine than what we've got now, where it's like one patch comes, we get a mode for 2 weeks, and then there's nothing for 2 weeks, something like that. Timefall 2 did it incredibly. They literally had a brand new mode every single week, or every 2 weeks, and then since they stopped supporting the game, they have just recycled every other week the older modes. So if you didn't get a chance 6 months ago, it might be back next week or the week after. And it's never stopping. It's constant every single week. If we can get to that point, that is really good. And people keep saying it's permanent, they need it permanent, but you don't. You really don't, because it's just going to saturate. Even though there's only 5 permanent modes right now, it's just going to saturate the player base. I think jetpack cargo was quite decisive. Some people loved it, and then the other half hated it. Why would you have a permanent mode that half the people don't like, right?
Well,
same goes for Ewok Hunt.
Sorry, what I was just going to mention there is I think that the argument about the limited time game modes, and I like your point about how we get to the point where you're revolving, it calls players back that may have stopped playing. But my argument with that is just that I feel like that's a really good idea if we had more content in the, like, for me, I go on and I play Galactic Assault or Hero versus Villains, and I don't enjoy the other game modes. So for me, like, I would love to have a little bit more to the game, and then have, like, I like these limited time events. You see some of the bigger games doing it, and I really like it. I really like the idea, but I want to like it in Battlefront, but I'm like, when I see like jetpack cargo come and then go, I'm like, oh, like, now I'm back to the 2 game modes. Like,
I get what you mean. I totally agree with you with more content. I mean, if you look at pretty much every other main shooter on the market, they all have limited time modes now. It started probably, I would say, around 2014, more so 2015. Titanfall used it when there wasn't much content coming out. They would just do limited time modes, and it was quite effective. But that's because it was basically every 2 to 3 weeks. Overwatch does it, Fortnite does it on a much regular basis, but that's completely a different analogy. There's a lot of games like Halo, Call of Duty has started to do it as well more frequently rather than just every other month. It just needs to happen more frequently, and I completely understand where you're coming from with more content. But when people say, oh, I've just waited 5 months for Ewok Hunt, no, it doesn't work like that. I get annoyed when people say, so it took them 5 months to make jetpack cargo and Ewok Hunt? No, it did not. You clearly don't care about how this sort of stuff works. You obviously don't have any understanding or want to learn about how it works.
what are your thoughts, Riva?
Yeah, Azzatru is right in saying that, jetpack cargo, like you said, it's a game mode that's been used from like Battlefront 2015, which is cargo, but only with the jump troopers. You even imagine that that takes more than a week, in my opinion. It's just DICE need to know their community well enough to say, okay, are they going to enjoy this kind of thing? And if so, you know, how should it be handled? Because in my opinion, a big problem with that game mode is that it was only available on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Like, whatever the reason was for that, whether it didn't work on other maps, is just out the window for me. I think that's ridiculous. I think they should put it on every map and let people decide if it works or not. Isn't that the point of a limited time game mode? If it doesn't work, then it can go. Because I posted a tweet saying, you know, imagine jetpack cargo with the B2 battle droids and the Phase 1 clone troopers on Camino. And, you know, people loved it. They're saying, you know, this would be a great idea. And realistically, we just got a round after round of Tatooine.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
like, even though the limited time game mode was it was fun. Like, I was kind of skeptical about it in the beginning, but it was fun for a few rounds. But if it just had a few more maps, a few more, you know, reinforcements that you can actually use in that game mode, I think it would have been a whole different story. And personally, that is on DICE. I
Yeah.
don't think that has anything to do with EA or the community. I think that's just DICE's creative control.
I don't understand how a lot of this community seem to think whenever something's added to this game, they have to play it 24/7. Because Jetpack Cargo was not a game mode for you to play every single day for 2 weeks. Yet people was like, it's boring after a day. Well, don't play it for hours on end. Simple as that. Like, you know, you might say I'm wrong in saying this, but there is so much other stuff to play. Don't just limit yourself. You know, it was never going to be something you could play all the time. You know,
It's just
games
that
aren't
hype
like
of
that.
having something new.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it should last longer, but at the same time, it's like if you're moaning that, oh, I've played it for 3 days straight, I'm bored now. Well, try something else. Play a different game. At the end of the day, it needed more maps, yeah, and it needed more stuff. But like Riva said, it doesn't take 5 months to make stuff. You know, do people not realize animators, 3D modelers, artists are completely different to UI programmers, designers? Like, I don't understand the mentality of some people at times. You know, I just don't understand it. I can't believe people actually think that way.
So one of the points that Andy made in the last podcast was that he didn't feel that DICE is targeting the right age demographic. Do you guys, what's your take on that?
What was like the topic?
Well, it was just to say that DICE is targeting like a younger audience, which is he feels is evident with things like getting points for when you die, or just the fact that like he was kind of saying that the substance of the game was there was more focus on looking good than like, you know, like us. He said us older folks kind of see right through that the gameplay is not where it needs to be.
But the thing is, Star Wars is for all ages, and I don't think people realize that the people that play this game are literally all ages. You know, the people that use social media are more so the under 18s, early 20s, right? If you're older than that, you're probably not going to be, you know, unless you're more so hardcore gamer, hardcore Star Wars fan, you're probably not going to be using social media to keep up to date with Battlefront 2 news and stuff like that. But you may play it every single weekend after you've got home from work, and you love playing the game. You know, I think a lot of people have this misconception that it's strictly young people that play this game, but there's a lot of older people that play it. They just don't necessarily talk about it all the time or are in this community. You know, there are millions of people that brought this game. They're not all under 18. And on top of that, the game is selling really well. The engagement levels are at all-time high. It's doing better than it has done since launch. So it can't just be all kids buying this game. Most kids are playing Fortnite right now. So, you know, and to, you know, the point about getting points for dying, you know, if you're a really bad player and you're an older gamer, how can you expect to get an incentive to, you know, get a hero or something like that, if you die a lot, it's good that there's an option. Well, it's not really an option, but it's something there to like, oh, I died, well, I'm 100 points closer to getting that hero. Things like that are good game design because it allows whatever skill you are, it's not catering to the so-called professionals. It's catering to, you know, people that are maybe 12 or under, or people that are 40 plus that don't play games often. They bought a PS4, they bought Battlefront 2. That's pretty much all they play, and they're not very good at games. But that's okay because they enjoy the game. You don't have to be good at a game to enjoy a game. If they're a Star Wars fan and they love Star Wars, they're gonna play this game. You know, when I went to Star Wars Celebration, most of the people that was at the reveal, one was there for the story. Most of them probably didn't care about the multiplayer, right? And they loved the idea of a Star Wars story because they were Star Wars fans. I think I'm glad that this community has quite a diversity where there's a lot of people of all different age ranges, all different levels of Star Wars love. You know, some people are absolutely loving Star Wars. They read every comic and book, that sort of stuff. There's also people that just like the films.
Okay. Well, something to kind of like maybe kind of tie into what his point was about the age demographic is that, like, when I was young, I could watch a movie, let's for example say like The Lion King or something like that. I could watch that every day for a month straight and nothing changed, and I was completely content watching this movie. So like I guess more the demographic he's saying is that like as we get older, like I couldn't do that. I couldn't watch the same movie. Maybe if I really liked it, I could go see it at the theater again. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't sit and do the same thing over and over again, and that's why like the older demographic requires, you know, more customization, more just like, I don't know, like little thing, like, you know, ranking up. Like I find it's not as exciting in Battlefront 2, and I think I spoke about that in the podcast with Stu Dog, was that, you know, when you rank up in Battlefront 1, there was always, or at least almost always, something that you were looking forward to, and I feel like in this game, like I couldn't even tell you what rank I am, honestly.
I agree with the ranking thing because it's just another thing. Like, I don't care for it. But the ranking in the first game, the only good stuff was in the first 25 levels, and then some skins later on every 10 levels with a new expansion, right? And you had to buy those. You know, people forget you had to buy the extra content. Whereas with this game, you have a lot more freedom. You can buy whatever skins you like, whenever. You can upgrade whatever hero you like because they're all free. You can do whatever you want. The only thing that's missing right now is like purchasable emotes, which hopefully will come in the near future. But compared to the first game, it's such a much better system, in my opinion, because you basically got every gun within the first 25 levels, and most people did that within the first month or so. There was literally nothing after level 25 for months. And that's what people complained about, whereas this time around, you have the freedom to focus on one or two heroes, but then maybe when you get bored of those heroes, or one becomes really powerful after a patch, you can just switch over and use that hero, that class sort of thing. There's a lot more class. I like the class-based system because there's a lot more freedom of what you want to focus on. You know, at the end of the day, probably the biggest audience of this game are kids, right? And they have to cater to the majority at times. I think with more content now that we're out of this progression drought and content drought, we can move on to the more frequent content drops and the better stuff, which, you know, you was on about that the older audience may like the most because they're sort of getting stale. It's getting stale for some people. I completely understand if it's getting stale because we've not had a major content drop since December. So I do agree on that point.
Yeah, I mean, the stale I got to agree with. Like, I mean, I've been playing the game faithfully since it came out, and I mean, this weekend I played yesterday, and I did afterwards. I did feel like, you know, I need, like, I'm bored, like, you know, and you know, streaming helps too because, you know, you can get the interactivity, you can talk about the game and stuff, and I find that fun. But I really felt a really stale feeling, and for the first time, personally, I'm getting a little bit worried. So I'm excited to see what's coming. That's for sure.
I mean, season 2 is getting ever closer, so I just really hope it's got some decent content. You know, I've just passed. I'm just checking now. 300 odd hours in Battlefront 2 on Origin right now, and I play it maybe one hour a day. I sort of limit my hours, not because I sort of make sure I have enough time to play 1 hour or so of 1 to 2 hours of games a day, because I don't have the time because of work. But I think some people maybe play it too much and then they get burned out and they don't realize they're doing that. They sort of force themselves to play it because they feel like I've got to play it to make videos, or I've got to play it to stream, or I love Star Wars, so I've got to play it 3 hours every single day. If you just manage what you was playing and try different games, you know, if you can't find a game that you don't think suits you, just try something that's similar to Battlefront, or, you know, I understand people are getting frustrated and stale, but sometimes you might just need a break. It's totally okay to stop playing a game. There's been a lot of people in my comment section saying, I'm taking a break until Clone Wars content. That's fair enough. You know, you're free to do whatever you like, and I just hope if we do get Clone Wars content in the future, which I'm sure we will do, it brings back a lot of people that may say, after this month, I'm not playing it, which is, you know, completely fine. Everyone's opinion's their own.
Riva, we're talking over you. What are you thinking? We're not giving you a chance to talk.
Yeah. Recently I've been playing a lot of Battlefront 2 recently, actually. And like Azzatru said, that is due to having a long break. Even though that break wasn't my decision, it was my computer not working, unfortunately. But yeah, as I've come back with the new progression update, with these skins, I've been playing a lot, and I feel like what I'm putting into the game is actually rewarding, which I don't think anyone felt in the beginning. You know, I've got 3 epic cards on my officer and my assault, and that's due to ranking up, which I think is, you know, it's fun. It's something to look forward to. The new skins, I've recently bought the new Ray skin with credits, you know, and it's just like, now you feel like every game you're playing is actually worth something. Before all of these changes, it was kind of like, okay, I'm playing, but credits don't mean anything. I'm playing, but crafting parts don't mean anything. You know, a lot of stuff was just not really worth your time. But now I actually feel like I'm playing with a purpose. I've been putting a lot more hours into the game, and that's brought me back to making videos on it. So I think Battlefront is always improving, slowly but surely.
Right.
I think you barely didn't play at the start of this year, right? Because you didn't even post a video for a while.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I've sort of not really took a proper break from the game because I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy hopping on, playing, making videos. I love making videos. So that's, you know, why I keep playing. But I completely agree, you know, if you know, you don't like the game, don't play it. Just wait until it does get better. And I feel like with the latest update, it's really helped player counts. You know, EA did say it's doing really well. It's going up the charts in the US and UK, even disc-based. You know, it's selling pretty much the best since The Last Jedi, which is good news for the community because it means there's a lot of new guys coming in, populating the servers.
Do you guys think that maybe the new progression launch, where it's kind of tough to resonate with the current players because they don't get to experience the progression as it was intended because they've already progressed?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think, you know, they're like, that's completely fine. Like, that's a completely understandable reason for being frustrated with it. The progression did take a long time to get fixed, but you know, it's the perfect system to support future content.
I completely agree.
When season 2 comes, whether that's with heroes, whether that's with new classes, new reinforcements, no matter what comes in that, you're going to have the perfect progression system to support your progression for those new characters. And this is
I
going to stick with the game, you know, up until, you know, whenever we do get Clone Wars, if we do get Clone Wars, then you're going to enjoy progressing those characters the way it should have been.
I mean, I think the progression right now is better than anything I expected. I did not expect this level of freedom to do whatever you like, and to be this. It's quite generous, really. You know, it's really generous for both the new players, more so the returning players, because if you put a lot of hours previously, you will have got a lot of crafting parts and credits. But it's a generous system. I expected the ability not to be able to pick what skins you wanted with crystals and credits, but here we are. It's really good, and like River said, it sets up for new content because it means whatever they put in next is ready for this system. And you know, it's definitely released later than it should have done it, but at the same time, if it released a month or two earlier, would it have been as good? Probably not. If it released 2 months after launch, would it have been any close to being as good as it is right now? Absolutely not. So yeah, we've had to wait time, and it sucks. It's annoying and frustrating. It took 4 months to get it out, but it's perfect in my opinion, pretty much at the moment. I can't really fault it.
All right, I got a question for you guys. I kind of know how Azzatru feels about this already from our discussion, but I gotta agree with Andy and Stu, and just that I really think stats need to be a thing. Like you look at Fortnite, like even YouTube videos, like everyone's talking about, you know, how many wins, how many kills, win percent, KD. Like it just that feeling of self improvement goes a long way in replay value.
Yeah, I agree. I think because I don't know if you recall Dennis saying, but he has said that they've been tracking stats since launch. So they have all of these menus, like there's been mods created to unlock these menus in the game. So everything is there. So I completely agree. Stats, I believe it shouldn't even be a question. Like it should 100% be in the game. And if they're tracking it behind closed doors, then I don't see why it's an issue to just release it to the public. In my opinion, I think, you know, they're looking at stuff on a priority list right now. You know, we don't have private matches, but they fixed the progression. And they're missing out on a lot of small stuff that may not seem big to them, but from a gamer's point of view, is actually needed. So yeah, I 100% agree that stats need to be here. I don't see why it's just not as easy as unlocking that menu like people have done in mods. For whatever reason, I think DICE need to get it out as soon as they can.
I think, yeah, I agree with that. I think the Fortnite thing with stats definitely has changed my opinion a little bit because how much it's been shared and stuff like that. But I think I'm just worried when it does come back, it's just going to create the same toxicity that the last game had, where a lot of people were just solely focused on, if you've got a lower than whatever 2 KD, you're a bad player, or, you know, people would give you grief, or give, you know, players that aren't necessarily so good in terms of kills and deaths, a lot of grief just because they're not a certain, you know, number. And I feel like that is what's going to happen. I'm just scared that's going to happen personally, and I don't want that in the community. Having said that, if they put a huge focus on objective score and win losses, then it makes great sense to have it back. And you know, if they were, you know, the game, especially modes like Galactic Assault, really reward objective play. So it makes perfect sense that they focus a lot of in-depth stats and stuff like that on objective play and win-loss. I just really don't like the idea of KD being the BN end-all, front and center of this stats page, just like the last game, because it's just going to create this scenario where people like on Twitter and YouTube comments, if you don't have a 2 KD or whatever, you're bad. You need to get good, stuff like that. It's not fun for players that nowhere near that, but they play the game a lot and they love doing the objectives and stuff like that. So if there's a huge focus on win losses and stuff like that, then I can really get on board with it. But I just hope it doesn't go back to the previous game where all everyone cares about is KD, because it shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, you could kill 50 guys and 3 deaths, but still lose the game and lose every game because you're not playing the objective.
I agree with that. I recall, like you say, the 2 KD. It was something I always like, and I'm sure by the end of 2015 I was right around there, average per round. But there was and I remember being, you get the chirps on PlayStation Messenger like, oh my god, your KD's only, I think it was 1.15. I think I played the game the other day and I looked at it. I think it was 1.15 or something like that. And I remember getting chirped like over and over again, like, oh my god, your KD sucks. But I also remember a time when my KD was 0.65, and it felt really good for me to go into that screen and see it growing and going up, because that means I'm getting better at the game. Right now, I feel like some days I'm good and some days I'm bad, but I don't know if I'm getting any better. Like, I don't...
Yeah. I think that's why there needs to be a stat screen as soon as possible. I think if it doesn't come with Season 2, then we've got a major issue on our hands in terms of that, because we'll be going into 6 months without 6 to 7 months without it. But saying that, there's a lot of games in the past, games like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Call of Duty has been everyone cared about their KD and has done for years, and that did not even launch with a stats or leaderboard system, and that was worrying for that community, and that's when more people cared about their stats. So it seems like it's one of those things with games these days. They care less about stats because it's something what a lot of people want to pry away with, because of something I've mentioned, like people always making it, something that is a useful feature into a bad thing. But I think that's just the nature of certain people. But it needs to be back as soon as possible.
Would you guys ever want to see the trait cards come back? That kind of award, like, and you know what? When it first came out, it awarded basically kills, but then it kind of changed where even playing the objective, you could push your trait card up. I really like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Introduced with the boost cards though right now, haven't they? So like you get battle points at an increased rate. Your health regeneration is faster. Like they're just boost cards, but they've been renamed. I think to increase the level, like you said, trade card, like level 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Maybe for heroes, not necessarily troopers right now. Potentially heroes.
I think they can't introduce that because right now they've put the cards on rarities. So, for example, like the epic rarity will be trait level 3, for example. It's just another way of working it. So your progression is still that way, but once you've got trait level 3 in a sense, then you keep it.
Okay. We kind of talked about the cards in the rarities in the last podcast as well, and like see if you guys kind of agree that the talking about the excitement of ranking up and improving a star card or whatever, is that the improvement is so small that it's not necessarily noticeable when you upgrade it, and as compared to the cost, especially under the previous progression system, for sure that upgrading a card seemed like you just barely noticed a difference. How do you guys feel about that?
That is only the case because of the pay to win aspects from the original progression system. So you can't have too much of a drastic change because people are like, what? That's completely unfair. Like Kylo Ren has a card where you can deal damage with your force pull just by equipping that card, and you can increase that damage based on what cards you do. So there needs to be a balance. Like a lot of the cards I don't agree with, like there's some that literally go up by 2%, and it feels useless. So a lot of the cards I don't even use. Like I've been stuck to the same 3 cards on pretty much all of my classes for the longest time now. So yeah, I completely agree that cards don't have an impact in upgrading, but for the ones I do use, I'd say they're worth the effort. There's a lot of cards that are not.
Yes. I got a.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I do agree. I feel like at times though, some of the stuff, for the most part, most of it's balanced. There's some that definitely need to maybe be reduced, but at the same time, a lot of them, if they were bigger increments, they'd be quite overpowered. I feel like Starfighter Assault is the only game mode where this sort of happens, where there are really big increments between the rarities and stuff like that. But like Riva said, I've been stuck with a lot of the same star cards since launch, but I felt like I thought to myself the other day, I really sort of need to expand and try new stuff. I think it's now down to the fact I've actually got the crafting parts to make skill points to, try out new stuff. Where it was expensive to do that with crafting parts in the past, now it's really easy to do that. But I feel like with the addition of maybe either more star cards or some tweaking to the values, I think, to a few at least, not that many, I think it's in a good place personally. I do agree with that sort of stuff. But I don't think it's a core issue at the moment. I think it's sort of okay the way it is right now.
Okay. The couple more things that I wanted to just kind of go over, and one of them was, is EA and DICE sometimes a victim of consumers thinking that they want something that they don't, or necessarily maybe the low percentage consumer getting what they want? And I'm referring to things like the campaign and free DLC, not using reused content. Do you think these people are kind of like, it's almost like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing? Because we're not hearing anything about, like, the campaign was like so huge, like, we're getting a campaign, there better be a campaign, but no one's playing the campaign. Or the free DLC, everyone's like, well, I want communication. Well, and when the DLC's free, we can only discuss things within the relevant quarter. It's kind of like, are people kind of looking back and saying like, oh, like, shit, I wish we really focused on the things we actually really wanted than things we didn't know we wanted.
I think a lot of people are quite stubborn and don't really think about what they wanted previously. As for the campaign, most people wanted a campaign. Well, I say most people, a lot of vocal people. We got it, and it was probably never going to be a replayable campaign. Personally, it actually adds a lot more to the game and the Star Wars universe as opposed to the Battlefront 2 2005 campaign, which is essentially just maps with some cutscenes that aren't actually very good. People just like the nostalgia a lot and think it was amazing. I mean, it was fun when it was like 10 years ago, but it's nothing in comparison to what games have these days, Free DLC, we got free DLC because it's what makes games good these days as a live service. It keeps communities together. Reuse content. Well, people wanted maps back, so we got a map back, and we're probably going to get more back. But people weren't happy, even though they did have to change stuff. It's not a 5-minute job. It's not a copy the file over from one folder on a computer and put it into the next folder. People just, I don't know. It's a tough one because
I think the problem with reused content is that DICE are prioritizing it over new content, and I think that's due to either it not being ready yet, or they're just like, take this as something new to say that, we know you want content, it's not ready yet, so take something that is ready.
I feel like we should have had more of that, though. Personally, we should have had more of it rather than just not having it at all. We should have had a bit more of it right now, because the last game had a lot of good stuff. I would love to see one of the outer rim maps come back as soon as possible, really. It's just something extra. But it needs to come sooner rather than later, but also we need actual new stuff at the same time.
I know For another Battlefront YouTuber had made a video before, and this is kind of on the topic of reused content, and it was more about, I think it was Fire Guy Gaming, perhaps, that did it, and it was more about why are we using like so many old heroes from the previous game and not focusing on the newer heroes. And I know that's kind of an older problem, but even the choice in the previous game to use like bounty hunters over some of the main characters, like that's kind of a discussion that pops up now and again. I find in the amongst the player base, like why add boss to the game versus say like Anakin, or we get guys like Dengar, Nine Num, like let's get some major.
I agree, but at the same time, people don't understand the hard decisions they had to make in the development of this game. It's some people forget every game goes through stuff like this. They have to cut things to prioritize a time. They have a deadline, and they have to stick to it. They can't miss it. And things have to be cut. Every game, every film, every media. I would love to see more heroes. Some people seem to think game changers are against like new heroes or something. It's like, no, we want them, but at the same time, Bosk was there, and they took him and made him much more interesting actually this time around. He has new abilities. It's not like it's a straight copy and paste. There was differences. I could understand if it was a complete carbon copy. I feel like some people are less forgiving than others, and that's okay because you need people to be on their back to actually, stick to the word and make new stuff. But it isn't just as simple as like, we're gonna make Anakin and put him out now. I think some people live in a fantasy land at times.
What about the choices of skins? We'll get maybe Riva to start here. There's a lot of talk about especially the bandaged Chewie recently. Are we kind of prioritizing some skins that maybe, like, a lot of people are talking about, like, where if you're gonna do one for Chewie, why not do one with like C-3PO or something like that? Can you as a consumer justify paying real money to add a Band-Aid to Chewie?
I'm with the community on this one. I think Wounded Chewbacca is ridiculous.
It is a
I
daft
think-
idea.
I think I said this in one of my videos, like I done an analysis of the update and said everything good and bad about it. And the bad points is that this is the first look of customization we're getting in Battlefront 2 since launch. That's like 5-6 months to get this customization. And I was so confused as to why we had to hear about legendary skins from Ben on Twitter. Like myself and Azzatru, like we said, we're game changers. We can we had just different expectations, I can say, for what was going to be released. But these, it's just, why aren't the legendary skins here? You're going to release your massive April cosmetics update with a Wounded Chewbacca. Like, if you didn't, that's pushing people away from the game even more. I believe they should have released the best of the best skins that they have in the locker, because this definitely can't be it.
Well, there's been more leaked ones. There is Clone Legions. There are other skins for the other factions. There are other hero skins they could be doing. It makes no sense. I was confused as to why there is only this set. If we were getting new skins every single week, maybe 4 or 5 every single week, like maybe 4 hero skins and 5 or 6 trooper skins every single week, it makes more sense. But we've not had any added
I
in.
think that's a bit too drastic. Maybe one for each class, maybe one skin, like one hero.
We just need to get to this point where there's regular new stuff coming every week. I think every week is a good target. Every 2 weeks is probably more realistic, and would still be better than every 4 weeks right now. we just need new stuff because, you know, some people seem to think they have to buy everything, but I'm glad there's a bit of freedom because not everyone wants to play Kylo Ren, so they're not going to buy Kylo Ren's skin. But if we got to the point where pretty much every hero has 4 to 5 different skins in a few months' time, or every faction has a lot more, you know, people make this a really good point. There is a lot of skins in the old game that should be in this new game right now. It should have happened previously.
For sure. So the last thing I want to mention today is so we got a new community manager, and not really speaking in a comparative sense, like compared him to the previous one, but like I gotta say I'm pretty impressed by what I'm seeing in terms of communication and things like that. Have we hit the turning point of this game? Like, is this where things are really gonna turn around? And because we're like what, 6 months in? Like, is this it, where we turn the game around?
I think with the next community transmission, and maybe, well, with the announcement of Season 2 and the next community transmission, I think that's the turning point. Because I think then they can go on to the best things they've got coming. They can hopefully have this roadmap out. Hopefully they can say, this is coming every 2 weeks, that sort of stuff. We're getting there, we're just not there just yet. But Ben's been awesome. Ben has done a fantastic job. I think he's done a much better job than any of us in the community expected. He's really, you know, helped us out. He just needs it happening on the EA Star Wars account now. You know, we can't be just looking for Ben's posts on the forums, Reddit, and Twitter. We need it going on the official pages and stuff like that.
For sure. Sorry, I got caught in a daze there. I was off in space for a second, but yeah, like I have to say that you know, the communication, you know, was addressed I think it was in February or March, and I understand moving forward that you wouldn't want to say, you know, 9 months from now we're gonna have all these huge DLCs and all this stuff. Like, I get that, but things like even getting communication about, like, you know, the overheat glitch, for instance, to say, hey guys, we're currently in the works, we expect that to be fixed by X time. I feel like that doesn't necessarily have any impact on the Star Wars name or the EA shareholders, to, you know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm kind of seeing this turnaround, where we're, you know, Ben's responding saying, yes, we recognize this and we have someone working on it, you know, more news in early May. And then someone says, well, what's early May? And he's, you know, 1st to 10th is early, mid is 11th. You know what I mean? Like, I'm seeing these conversations, and it's actually making me feel like we're at a turning point.
You know,
the EA Star Wars Twitter is like, they need to put tweets through approval, as funny as that sounds.
Yeah, it's a brand account. It's the face of Star Wars games.
Yeah, and you know, they have to make sure everything is spelled correctly. They need to make sure, like, what they're posting is fine to post. You know, with Ben, he's his own person. He's not contracted to Lucasfilm. He can say whatever he wants about his game. But these official channels is the Lucasfilm grip. Like, Ben's not under that grip, and neither was Dennis when he goes on his random, like, explosions of information.
And they might not necessarily like it. They may get a telling off for doing this stuff, and that's probably why he's not done one in quite some time. But you know when EA Star Wars posts a tweet, that's probably had to go through multiple levels of verification and approval, plus then localized into many different languages, because this is then reposted upon many different EA country Twitter and Facebook accounts, stuff like that. It's basically copied elsewhere. So if they get something wrong, then they have to change it for all these other languages. You know, it's not great, but this is how it happens, and this is how it's going to be done. And we're definitely they're getting better at it, but it needs to be done more so through the official channels. You know, I can't agree with anyone else anymore. It needs to be better. We all know they know it needs to be better, but I feel like in the next month or so we are going to beginning to see a huge shift. Fingers crossed. I think we're getting there. We're just about to get there, where it's like this is where it should have been, but we've got it now.
Right. Do you guys think it's somewhat ironic that the consumer base is dying for prequel content, but they're actually like there's a lot of criticism about those movies. Like a lot of people were dissatisfied about, especially episodes 1 and 2.
I think the I think they're asking for the Clone Wars content is mainly because Battlefront 2015 was focused on the original trilogy, and in this game we
Yeah.
more or less have everything from the sequel trilogy already, with like exception of some people to be considered heroes like Poe. Like he's not really a hero, but something that could be considered. With Clone Wars content, it's something we've never seen in DICE's Battlefront game. So everyone wants to experience that. And there's no judging that, you know, the battles on Geonosis, in Coruscant, in Utapau with General Grievous, all these kinds of amazing battles. Not so much the storylines of the prequels, but the battles, the clones, how like there's so much potential in there, is what people want. Because
People forget. Sorry, go on. You know, people forget the developers are huge Clone Wars fans and Rebels fans. You know, that they love the Clone Wars stuff. They don't hate it. You know, there are people that hate the films and stuff like that, but it's also a case of the people that want this Clone Wars content, and more so the, you know, a lot of stuff like when skirmish with the last game. It's a vocal minority. I'm not saying Clone Wars is a vocal minority, but there are a lot of people that might not necessarily want Clone Wars. There's people in my comment section saying they really want solo content over Clone Wars content because they really like the look of the solo film. They love the original trilogy, and they're probably more older people, I would guess, because that's sort of the demographic. But you know, not everyone just wants one thing, and I feel like that's the only downfall right now. Is like we have 3 eras to pick from, more if you count something like Rebels, but you know, it's good that we've got this choice. It's just that we do need more Clone Wars because there's a huge lack of that right now. I totally agree, but at the same time, not everyone's on the same side, and I feel like the solo content's gonna just further that people that don't want to play the game anymore. But at the same time, it would be a stupid decision from Disney and EA to not capitalize on this new film, because regardless what you think about it,
if Solo is a good film, and season 2 is Solo, for example, then I guarantee the community is going to love it. Like
Yeah.
depending whatever is in the season, if it was like whatever they can work with, I guarantee like if the film is good, then they'll love it. I don't think DICE is at fault. Like they're offering like free content. That's all we can ask for, really. If the film is bad, then it's gonna put a bad name on the DLC.
yeah,
But you know, as soon as that film comes out, I'm gonna be hyped. I'm gonna say like, you know, it was good. Like I'll probably reconsider my opinions on it like throughout the week after seeing it. But as soon as I come out of the theater after seeing it, I'm gonna want to go home and play it. That's just me. Like,
And
of course, I'd prefer Clone Wars, but that's just, you know.
and a lot of the people that play this game are Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans, whether you like The Last Jedi or hated it, whether you think Disney ruined the franchise, you're going to go and purchase a ticket to watch Solo. I don't care what people say, they're going to do it because they will do it. They are Star Wars fans. They'll go out and watch it, and if it's somewhat okay, they'll be like, wait, Battlefront 2 has Solo update. I'm going to go and play, you know, one of the locations or as Han or something like that. People that may not have picked up the game or may have sold it and want to get back into it. They like the film, or they're just happy for something new because they're a Star Wars fan. They're not all about, oh, I want General Grievous and Obi-Wan, but I like Star Wars, I like this film, I want to play and reenact my moments. It's all a good thing, except for the lack of Clone Wars content, because it's just gonna generate more hype around the game, and new people, old people returning. It's just more stuff in general. You know, people may not like it, and that's okay. And if it is bad, we're gonna make it known we don't like it. But look at the Outer Rim DLC. When it was first announced that it was getting Greedo and Ninum and Salust and Tatooine, which were two maps already in the game, people were annoyed, and you know, we saw hate videos, we saw death threats to developers on Twitter and stuff like that, and Reddit was awful. It came out a year later, it's still everyone's favorite DLC. They loved it. The community loved it. Had the best mode, probably more so down to just the fact that the mode was good, but the heroes were cool. So who knows? Maybe the solo season is going to be this game's Outer Rim, where we didn't want it, but it's actually going to be good. Time will tell, though. I'm just saying, I'm just speculating there, but who knows? We've just sort of got to keep an open mind. A lot of people are going to go into it and hate it before it's... Well, people are hating on it before they've even confirmed it's coming out, you know, so...
I think that regardless of whether Solo's a good movie or not, I think it's going to be a victim of the bad publicity that The Last Jedi got, and I think that's kind of like something some people will be able to see through, and they'll be able to watch the movie and enjoy it regardless. But I think a lot of, like, with the bad publicity that The Last Jedi got, that people are apprehensive about the Solo DLC, or the Solo movie, therefore would be like thinking that the Solo DLC would not be good either. So that's kind of like, it's a lot of assuming, speculation, but that would be my thought process for why people don't want a Solo season.
Oh, I do agree with you. There's a lot riding on it, but at the same time, it's like people say The Last Jedi was a flop. Well, no, it wasn't. It's just that it was quite vocal on the internet. People didn't like it, but that doesn't count for the millions of people that went and watched it and purchased or pre-ordered the Blu-ray and stuff like that, and continue to buy toys.
Yeah,
and this is the same predicament.
I didn't enjoy The Last Jedi as much as I thought, but that didn't change the fact that I go home and I can play as Rey in her Jedi robes on Crate. It's just a brilliant experience, like something that was like really nice, you know? You just come out of that experience and you can go and experience it yourself how you want. Like,
I think
regardless if I like the film or not.
I think the Resurrection content, as much as people may have hated that, playing that before and then connecting the dots, I was like, that's another thing I really liked about the story. The fact that the story is canon and had not an impact on the film franchise, but it connected some of the dots, and seeing the compass in the film, stuff like that. So, you know, this isn't necessarily something what the hardcore Battlefront fans like, but the majority of players who are casual Star Wars fans that will go and see the film on opening night, see it a couple of times, buy the toys and Blu-rays, they like this sort of thing.
I think the big problem too people have is they don't know they can't get excited because they know that a season is going to come with heroes. They don't really 100% know which heroes they'd rather see. Like, obviously we could see some skins for Lando, Solo, Chewie, but like, I think part of it's like the unknown. Well, if it's Solo, I don't know what heroes I'm going to get, so therefore I find it hard to get excited for it. Like, I want Clone Wars.
Dennis did say they may not necessarily have heroes, and I feel like there won't be any heroes in this season, which is going to be a disappointment given we've not had any heroes since the Last Jedi season. But, you know, I just feel like I've got a feeling that there won't be two heroes, personally.
Yeah, Dennis said that with seasons it's not always going to be following the DLC plan. He says sometimes you're going to get, you know, a new, like a unexpected game mode over two heroes, or maybe you will even get more than two heroes. Sometimes it's just that kind of that thing they're trialing, because if they did make the DLCs the same, then how is it any different to the season pass from last year?
If they released, say, Kira, whatever her name is, and Emphys Nest as heroes in the Solo DLC, the time taken for those heroes would be more appreciated by the community to put onto like Clone Wars heroes. So I feel like if we get a Clone Wars season, it has 4 to 6 heroes, then that would probably be more appreciated and more better, overall better experience for the game than 2 heroes that we're not attached to. I mentioned it in my last video. I don't feel like anyone's connected to those characters. I guess it's because we've not seen the film, but we've not seen them previously, right? Whereas everyone wants, the obvious Obi-Wan, Anakin, Grievous, and others. So I feel like we do have to wait longer, but it's for characters we actually want. Is that something that we want as the community? I feel like that is what people won't say they want, but I think it is, in the long run, the better option.
Nice. I think we got to shut her down. I think we could talk. I think we could talk all day, but I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your weekend to stop in and share your opinions. And I think from what I can see, that maybe there wasn't as much disagreement to the previous podcast as much as there's maybe a little bit of clarification. But it's good to see, and I think viewers will watch this and that whole opinion about EA Game Changers is kind of something that, like, it's maybe one person that likes to lash out of 1,000 and make that comment.
Yeah.
Where I don't think a lot of guys really truly believe that. So, I mean,
I think a lot of people like to be edgy on the internet. At the end of the day, it's cool to send hate to DICE and EA. You get your retweets and likes on Twitter, and some upvotes on Reddit. And that's what people care more about. They care more about attention rather than actually improving the game at times.
All right, so appreciate you guys coming in, and that's it. We'll chat with you guys again soon.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no problem, guys. I really appreciate you stopping in.
All right, have a good rest of your weekend.
You as
too.
well.